Tom was a quiet cowboy who lived on the far side of a small desert town. People in town often said he was gentle, honest, and patient, even when life treated him hard. Tom did not own much except an old horse, a pair of worn boots, and a small room above the local supply shop. Every morning he worked on nearby ranches, fixing fences or guiding cattle for a few coins. Every evening he sat by the window and wondered if he would ever have something he could truly call his own, something he could build with his own hands and protect with his own strength. One warm afternoon he walked through the market street looking for work. The wind carried the smell of dry soil and warm bread from the bakery. People talked, horses moved slowly, and the sun painted long shadows on the ground. Tom passed a wooden board where the townsfolk placed small notes. He looked without much interest until a tiny card caught his eye. It looked very old, like it had been pinned there for weeks without anyone caring to notice it. The card said an abandoned barn was for sale for $15. It belonged to a family that had moved away long ago. No one wanted the property because it stood several miles outside town and had a reputation for being useless. Tom read the card 3 times. $15 was almost all the money he had saved, but the thought of owning a place filled his heart with a feeling he had not felt in a long while. For years he had dreamed of having a space where he could keep tools, maybe grow some plants, or simply rest after a long day. The idea grew stronger each moment he stared at the card. He felt a small spark of hope inside him. After thinking for only a short while, he went to the office that handled abandoned properties, placed the money on the counter, and signed the papers. The officer seemed surprised someone wanted that forgotten barn, but Tom did not care. For the first time in many years he felt like he was moving forward. The next morning Tom packed some bread, water, and a few tools. Then he rode his horse toward the land he now owned. The sun rose slowly behind the hills, turning the sky into soft gold. The wind carried the scent of warm grass and the sound of birds waking up. Tom felt nervous yet excited. He imagined the barn would be rough and worn but reparable. Maybe he could clean it, rebuild the roof, and turn it into a simple but useful place. After a long ride he reached the land. The barn stood alone in the wide, open field. It looked tired and old, leaning slightly as if trying to hold on for one more season. The wooden boards were cracked. The roof had several holes that let sunlight fall through in narrow beams. The door hung crooked, moving gently whenever the wind pushed against it. There were weeds and tall grass around the walls, spreading wildly in every direction. Tom dismounted and stood still for a moment, taking everything in. It did not look impressive. It did not look strong. But it was his. That thought alone brought a small smile to his face. Tom walked closer and placed his hand on the door. The wood felt cold even under the strong sun. He pushed slowly. The door creaked loudly and the sound echoed through the empty structure. Dust rose in the air. The smell of old hay and dry soil filled his nose. Tom stepped inside and waited for his eyes to adjust to the dim light. Sunlight slipped through the cracks and holes, drawing bright lines on the floor. At first everything seemed silent. Tom listened carefully. He could hear the wind through the broken roof. He could hear a distant bird. Then he heard something else. A soft sound coming from the farthest corner of the barn. It was quiet but clear enough to make him stop where he stood. It sounded like a light shuffle on the ground. Tom felt his heartbeat rise a little. He was alone on this land. No one else should be here. Maybe it was an animal, but which kind he did not know. He did not want to take risks, so he reached for a long stick resting near the entrance. Holding it firmly, he walked slowly toward the sound. His boots pressed gently against the dusty floor. Each step echoed faintly in the large, empty space. The sound came again. A soft breath followed by a gentle snort. It did not sound dangerous, but it still sent a small chill through Tom. Whoever left the barn had not mentioned anything about animals. He moved closer. The light grew dimmer near the corner, so he pushed aside some loose pieces of wood to make room. He could feel the air change, a little warmer and heavier. The smell of hay was stronger. When he reached the corner he saw an old stack of hay that looked untouched for months. But behind it something moved. Tom held the stick tighter and took one more careful step forward. With his free hand he slid some of the hay to the side. That was when his eyes opened wide in shock. Standing behind the hay was a donkey. Its fur was dusty and tangled. Its ribs showed slightly under the skin. Its ears drooped like it had been tired for a long time. The donkey stared at him with large gentle eyes, as if trying to understand who he was and why he had come. For a long moment neither Tom nor the animal moved. Tom had expected broken wood, old tools, maybe even a snake hiding in the shadows. But he had never imagined a living donkey inside a forgotten barn that cost $15. Tom lowered the stick slowly. The donkey did not seem wild or harmful. It looked confused and lonely. He wondered how long it had been trapped inside this place. He looked around and saw no signs of food. The hay was old and dry. There was no clean water anywhere. A feeling of concern rose inside him. Tom spoke softly, hoping to calm the animal. His voice echoed lightly but stayed warm and steady. The donkey blinked and stepped forward just a little, as if it sensed kindness in his tone. Tom felt a strange connection in that moment. He came here hoping to find a barn he could fix. Instead he found a creature that needed help, care, and safety. And without planning it, without expecting it, Tom felt that this discovery was going to change his life in a way he could not yet understand. Tom stood still for a long moment, watching the donkey with a mix of surprise and concern. The poor animal looked weak and thirsty. Its coat was rough and dusty. Its eyes carried a sadness that made Tom's heart tighten. He slowly placed the stick aside and raised both hands a little to show he meant no harm. The donkey flicked its ears and took a small cautious step back, but it did not run. That small sign told Tom that the animal still had trust left inside, even after such loneliness. Tom moved one step at a time. He kept his voice calm and warm. He spoke simple words, hoping the donkey would feel safe. The donkey lowered its head and breathed softly. Tom reached into his bag and pulled out a small piece of bread. It was all he had brought for himself, but he could not ignore the animal's hunger. He held out the bread on his open palm. The donkey looked at it for a long moment, then stepped forward. It sniffed the bread slowly. Tom stayed very still. At last the donkey took a tiny bite. Its jaws moved slowly as if it had not tasted food in days. Seeing that gave Tom a feeling he could not explain. The barn might be broken and old, but suddenly it felt like a place worth saving. He waited until the donkey finished the last crumb. Then he placed his hand gently on its neck. The donkey did not pull away. Instead it leaned a little closer, as if grateful for the small bit of kindness. Tom felt warmth spread through his chest. He knew he could not leave the animal there. He had bought the barn, but now he had taken responsibility for the creature inside it too. Tom walked outside to fetch some water. He found a rusty metal bucket near the barn wall. He dusted it off and checked if it could still hold water. The bucket had dents but no holes. He walked to a small stream that ran behind the field. The water was clear and cool. He filled the bucket and carried it back carefully. The donkey watched him with curious eyes. When Tom placed the bucket near its feet, the donkey bent down at once and drank eagerly. The sound of the animal drinking echoed softly inside the barn. Tom let out a slow breath. Seeing the donkey drink with such need made him realize how long it must have been alone. He wondered who had left it here. Had the previous owners forgotten about it? Had they simply moved away without checking the barn? Tom did not know. But he promised himself that the donkey would never be forgotten again. After the donkey finished drinking, Tom guided it out of the dark corner and into a brighter part of the barn. He cleared the old hay from the floor and made space for the animal to rest. Then he sat on a wooden crate and studied the barn carefully. The structure was weak, but the place still had a strong spirit. Tom could imagine it repaired, with a safe roof, strong walls, and clean space for tools or animals. The thought filled him with new purpose. The donkey moved closer and rested its head near Tom's shoulder. Tom smiled and placed a gentle hand on its back. The animal seemed to enjoy the comfort. Tom spoke softly to it. He told the donkey that everything would be all right now. The donkey's ears twitched as if it understood every word. Tom spent the next hour exploring the entire barn. He looked behind every broken board, under every old crate, and through every pile of hay. He wanted to make sure there were no dangers for the donkey or for himself. He found nothing harmful, but he did find some tools left behind by the previous owners. There was an old hammer with a worn handle, a metal rake, and a couple of nails scattered on the ground. Most items were damaged by time, but Tom knew he could still use some of them. When he returned to the donkey, he noticed it watching every move he made. Its eyes were brighter now, less fearful and more trusting. Tom felt proud of the small progress they had made. He decided to step outside and take a look at the field. The land around the barn was wide and peaceful. Grass grew tall and wild, dancing in the wind. A few trees stood near the edges, offering shade from the strong sun. The sky above stretched endlessly. Tom felt a deep calm settle inside him. This land could become something beautiful with effort and care. He turned back toward the barn and felt a strong sense of belonging. He knew the place needed work. The roof needed fixing. The walls needed support. The door needed a new hinge. But he also knew he had the strength to do it. Tom believed that with patience he could rebuild everything that time had broken. The donkey walked toward the entrance, looking at him as if asking what they would do next. Tom laughed quietly. He had never imagined he would buy a barn and gain a companion on the same day. He reached out and touched the donkey's head. The animal closed its eyes for a moment, enjoying the gentle touch. Tom went back inside and gathered all the broken boards he could find. He planned to start cleaning the barn before sunset. The donkey stayed near him, following him with slow steps. Tom swept the dusty floor, stacked damaged wood outside, and removed anything that could hurt the animal. He worked until his back felt stiff and his hands grew tired. But he did not stop. He wanted to give the barn a fresh start. He wanted the donkey to feel safe. When the sun began to set, the barn looked a little brighter. The floor was cleaner. The air felt lighter. Even the donkey seemed more relaxed. Tom sat down near the entrance and watched the sky turn orange. The donkey stood beside him and lowered its head near his leg. Tom placed his hand on its shoulder. They sat together in silence, both tired but peaceful. Tom thought about his life. He had always dreamed of owning something meaningful. Now he had a barn, land, and a friend who depended on him. The responsibility felt heavy but also important. He knew he could not give up. He had made a promise to himself and to the donkey. As the last light of day faded, Tom whispered a quiet vow. He would rebuild the barn. He would help the donkey recover. He would make this place a home. And in that moment, under the soft glow of the setting sun, Tom felt hope rise inside him stronger than ever before. Tom woke up early the next morning. He had slept beside the barn wall with his hat over his eyes and the donkey resting a few steps away. The air was cool and fresh. Birds sang from the trees at the edge of the field. Tom stretched his tired arms and looked toward the barn. Even in the soft morning light, the place looked worn and fragile, but Tom felt no fear of the work ahead. Instead, he felt a clear purpose. The barn needed him, and the donkey needed him even more. The donkey raised its head when Tom stood up. Its ears moved, and its eyes looked kinder than the day before. Tom walked closer and rubbed its neck gently. He spoke to the animal in a warm voice. The donkey nudged his shoulder lightly, as if greeting an old friend. Tom smiled. He felt stronger knowing he was not alone on this land anymore. Tom walked to the stream again and filled the bucket with fresh water. The donkey drank deeply, and Tom watched with relief. After that he took out the small bit of food he had brought from town. It was not much, but he shared a piece with the donkey and kept only a little for himself. He would need to travel back to town later to buy proper feed, but for now this would help the animal stay energetic. When the donkey finished eating, Tom walked inside the barn and studied the structure in the clear morning light. The roof had large gaps that let sun and rain in. The beams were weak from years of neglect. The front door needed a hinge that no longer existed. Even the walls seemed to breathe with the wind. Tom knew it would take days of effort to make the place strong again, but he felt ready. He found an old hammer and a few nails from the corner where the previous owners had left their belongings. The hammer handle felt rough, but the metal head was still firm. Tom tested its weight and nodded. It would work. He also found a small stack of wooden boards leaning near the doorway. Most were damaged, but some could still be used. The donkey followed him inside and watched as he lifted tools and wood. It stood close, almost like a helper waiting for instructions. Tom laughed softly and told the donkey that today would be a busy day. The animal flicked its ears again, seeming happy with the attention. Tom started with the roof. He climbed onto an old wooden crate to reach the broken beams. The work was slow and difficult. Dust fell into his hair and sunlight hit his eyes as he tried to place boards over the large holes. The hammer rang through the empty barn. Each strike echoed like a small announcement that the place was being brought back to life. As Tom worked, he noticed the donkey walking in and out of the barn, sniffing the ground or looking into the distance. It seemed restless at times, like it was expecting something or someone. Tom watched it closely whenever he took a short break. He wondered again how the donkey had ended up here. It looked too gentle to be wild. Someone must have cared for it before. Someone must have left it behind. Tom did not want to think badly of anyone, but the thought troubled him. No animal deserved to be forgotten in an abandoned barn. He kept that thought in his mind as he hammered board after board into place. After several hours the sun grew hotter. Tom wiped sweat from his forehead and walked outside to drink water from his flask. The donkey followed him faithfully. Tom sat under the shade of a nearby tree, and the donkey stood beside him, resting its head near his shoulder. Tom gently touched the animal's neck and talked softly. He told the donkey about his old life, the ranches he had worked on, the dreams he once had but never reached. The donkey listened in silence, its warm breath brushing Tom's arm. Tom felt something change inside him. It felt like a quiet strength forming, something he had not felt before. Helping the donkey and fixing the barn made him feel capable and needed. It gave him direction and hope. He wanted this feeling to stay. After resting, Tom returned to work. He started cleaning the barn floor, removing the last of the old hay and broken crates. He pushed everything outside and created neat piles. The donkey followed him everywhere, curious about every item he picked up. When Tom found a long rope tangled in a corner, the donkey sniffed it and stepped back, as if it remembered something unpleasant about it. Tom placed the rope aside gently. He did not want the donkey to feel scared. While sweeping, Tom noticed something unusual near the far wall. It was a small wooden box half buried under dust. Tom knelt down and brushed the top with his hand. The wood was old but still strong. He lifted the box and opened it. Inside he found several small metal tags attached to pieces of rope. They looked like identification tags used on animals. Each tag had a number scratched into the metal. Tom frowned. He checked the donkey's neck and found no tag, but he wondered if the animal had once belonged to a ranch. Maybe it had escaped or been forgotten during a move. Maybe the previous family had left in a hurry. There were many possibilities, but none of them made him feel at ease. Tom carefully closed the box and set it aside. He would keep it for later. Maybe it would become useful in understanding the donkey's past. The day continued with steady work. Tom fixed a few gaps in the walls, tightened loose boards, and cleared a section of the barn where the donkey could sleep safely. When evening came, the inside looked cleaner and brighter. The place still needed many repairs, but it already felt more alive. As the sun lowered, Tom stepped outside and looked over the field. The sky turned a warm shade of orange. The donkey stood beside him, calm and comfortable. Tom felt a deep sense of peace. He had worked hard, and he could see the results around him. The land felt more welcoming, the barn stronger, and the donkey healthier. Tom sat on the ground near the barn entrance and breathed in the cool evening air. He thought about the mysterious metal tags. He thought about the donkey's sudden appearance. He thought about the work still ahead. But none of these thoughts frightened him. For the first time in a long while, Tom felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The donkey lowered its head beside him. Tom placed his hand on its shoulder and spoke softly. He promised that tomorrow would bring more repairs and more progress. He promised the donkey that it would never be alone again. Under the fading light, Tom and the donkey rested together, unaware that the mystery of the barn and the land was slowly beginning to unfold, and that the next days would bring answers Tom never expected. The next morning Tom woke up before sunrise. The sky was still dark blue, with a thin silver line forming on the horizon. The donkey slept peacefully beside the barn door, its breathing soft and steady. Tom stood up and stretched his back. His muscles felt sore from the long hours of work, but the feeling made him proud. Hard work meant progress, and progress meant hope. Tom walked to the stream again to fill the bucket with fresh water. The donkey lifted its head when he returned and walked over quickly, eager for a drink. Tom watched with a calm smile. He felt a growing bond with the animal, something warm and steady like a friendship built slowly and honestly. When the donkey finished, Tom brushed its coat with his hand to remove dust and loose hay. The donkey leaned into his touch, trusting him completely. The barn looked better today, even in the early light. The roof patching held strong through the night. The floor was cleaner. The air smelled fresher. Tom felt proud of every small improvement. He planned to fix the remaining gaps in the walls and then build a simple fence around the barn so the donkey could wander safely. Before starting work, he sat near the entrance and picked up the small wooden box he had found the day before. He opened it again and studied the metal tags inside. The numbers were scratched deeply, not printed. Each tag looked handmade. Tom wondered again who had kept these and why they had been hidden. He looked at the donkey and shook his head gently. There were questions he could not answer yet, but he believed the truth would show itself in time. He spent the next few hours repairing the wall near the west side of the barn. He hammered in new boards and tightened loose pieces. The donkey stayed close, watching him with curious eyes, sometimes nudging a board or sniffing the tools. Tom talked to it while he worked. He liked its company. The land felt less empty because of the donkey's presence. Around midday Tom stepped outside to rest for a moment. The sun was bright and the wind warm. He wiped sweat from his forehead and took a long drink from his flask. As he rested, he noticed something in the distance. A small figure moved along the dirt path that led to his land. Tom narrowed his eyes and stood up. The donkey followed his gaze and made a soft sound, almost like a warning or a question. Tom waited quietly until the figure came closer. It was a man riding a brown horse. The rider wore a dusty coat and a wide hat that hid part of his face. He held the reins firmly and sat upright, moving with purpose. Tom felt a small knot of worry form in his stomach. No one ever came to this land. It was far from town and forgotten by most people. The rider stopped a few meters away from the barn. He looked around slowly, taking in the field, the patched roof, and then the donkey beside Tom. His gaze stayed on the donkey for a long moment. Tom stepped forward, placing himself between the rider and the animal without thinking. The rider finally spoke. His voice was steady and calm. He asked if Tom was the new owner of the barn. Tom nodded and introduced himself. The rider gave his name as Joel. He said he used to know the family who once lived here. He said he had come to check on the land because he heard it had been sold. Tom watched Joel closely. There was something quiet and thoughtful in the man's eyes, but also something that made Tom uneasy. Joel asked how much Tom had paid for the barn. When Tom said $15, Joel gave a slow nod, as if he expected that answer. Joel looked at the donkey again and asked where it came from. Tom felt the donkey move closer to him, as if seeking protection. Tom explained how he found it inside the barn on his first day. Joel's expression changed slightly. Not anger, not surprise, but a strange mixture of concern and deep thinking. Joel stepped down from his horse and walked slowly toward the barn. Tom followed him. Joel placed his hand on one of the patched boards and tested its strength. He said Tom had done good work so far. His tone was calm, but Tom sensed something hidden beneath the man's words. After walking around the barn, Joel stopped and looked toward the field. He spoke quietly, saying the previous owners left in a hurry because they had fallen into hard times. They had sold most of their animals but lost track of some things during the move. Tom asked if the donkey belonged to them. Joel hesitated before answering. He said he was not fully sure, but he knew the family used to have several animals with numbered tags. When Tom showed him the small wooden box, Joel examined the tags carefully. Joel said the numbers looked familiar. They matched a system used by a nearby ranch to track rescued animals. That ranch had once taken in injured or lost animals from the region. Joel said he thought the donkey might have been part of that rescue effort long ago. Maybe it was brought here for safety and then forgotten when the family left. Tom felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that the donkey had not been abandoned on purpose, and sadness that it had still been left alone for so long. Joel closed the box gently and handed it back. He told Tom that if the donkey had survived this long on its own, it must be strong and brave. Tom looked at the donkey beside him, now calm and steady. He felt proud of the animal. Before leaving, Joel told Tom he planned to travel again soon, but he would return in a few days to check on things. He told Tom to take good care of the donkey and offered a quiet warning to stay alert. Tom asked what he meant, but Joel simply said that sometimes old places hold memories that reach farther than expected. Tom watched Joel ride away along the dirt path, the horse kicking up small clouds of dust. The donkey stood beside Tom, its ears pointed forward as it watched the rider disappear. Tom turned back toward the barn. The air felt heavier now, filled with questions he had not asked and answers he could not explain. Why had Joel seemed so concerned about the tags? Why had he warned Tom to stay alert? Why did the donkey react so strongly to the stranger's presence? Tom looked down at the donkey and placed his hand gently on its back. The animal pressed closer as if seeking comfort. Tom felt a quiet promise rise in his heart. No matter what mystery surrounded the barn or the donkey's past, he would not let anything harm it. The sun moved lower in the sky. The field remained silent. And Tom understood that the days ahead were going to bring truth, challenge, and change. Tom woke early the next day with a strange feeling in his chest. The sky was still gray and quiet, and the air felt heavy, almost as if the land was waiting for something. The donkey stood near the barn door, watching Tom with calm eyes. Tom placed a hand on the animal's neck and spoke to it gently. He sensed that both of them were about to learn something important. Tom decided to start the morning by finishing the last repairs on the barn. He fetched the hammer and nails and climbed up to fix the final gap in the wall. While hammering, he kept thinking about Joel's warning. Stay alert. Those words had stayed in Tom's mind all night. He wanted to believe the warning was simple advice, but something about Joel's tone had felt deeper. The donkey paced around the barn as if it sensed Tom's worry. Sometimes it looked toward the dirt path, as if expecting someone to return. Tom noticed this and felt a small unease. The donkey's behavior had changed since Joel's visit. It seemed more watchful, more aware of sounds in the distance. By the time the sun rose fully, Tom had finished the repairs. The barn looked stronger than ever. The walls were firm, the roof was mostly secure, and the inside was neat and clean. Tom stood back and admired his work. He felt proud and grateful. For the first time since buying the barn, he felt like he had truly built something of his own. While Tom prepared to build a small fence, he heard something unexpected. Hoofbeats. Not one set, but several. Slow, steady, approaching from the same path Joel had taken. Tom looked up and saw 3 riders heading toward the barn. The donkey froze and let out a soft but tense breath. Tom felt his heart start to beat faster. The riders stopped a short distance from the barn. Their horses stood quietly, tails swaying. The men looked like ranch workers, with simple coats and wide hats. One of them stepped forward. He greeted Tom politely and introduced himself as Reed. He said he worked at a rescue ranch some miles away. They had heard news about the barn being sold and had come to check if something left behind years ago had been found. Tom listened carefully. Reed explained that many years ago, the previous owners had agreed to care for some rescued animals from their ranch, including a donkey that needed rest and safe shelter. But a sudden move had forced the family to leave quickly. In the rush, they informed the rescue ranch too late. When workers arrived later, the barn was locked and empty. They had assumed the donkey had been taken away during the move. No one had imagined it might still be here. Tom felt a heavy silence fall between them. He looked toward the donkey. The animal stood half hidden behind him, its ears lowered but its eyes wide. Reed followed Tom's gaze. When he saw the donkey clearly, he froze for a moment. Then his face softened with recognition. He stepped back slowly to avoid frightening the animal. Reed said he believed this was the same donkey they had once cared for. He even remembered the gentle mark near its ear. Tom moved closer to the donkey and touched its neck. The animal leaned against him as if choosing to stay by his side. Tom understood its message clearly. It had found a home here. It trusted him. Reed explained that the rescue ranch did not take animals back unless absolutely necessary. He asked if Tom wanted help caring for the donkey and offered supplies if needed. Tom felt a wave of relief. He had feared they had come to take the donkey away, but instead they were offering support. Tom thanked them and said he planned to keep the donkey as long as it wanted to stay with him. Reed nodded with approval. He said the donkey looked healthier already and that Tom was clearly giving it the care it needed. One of the other men stepped forward and handed Tom a small cloth bag. Inside were fresh feed, a brush for grooming, and a few items that might help with the donkey's health. Tom accepted them gratefully. The donkey sniffed the bag and nudged Tom gently, as if excited about the gifts. Before leaving, Reed looked around the barn and smiled. He said Tom had done good work. The land looked stronger and safer now. He added that if Tom ever needed help, the rescue ranch was always ready to offer support. Tom thanked him again. He felt lighter now, as if a weight had lifted from his shoulders. The riders soon turned their horses and headed back down the dirt path. Tom watched them disappear into the distance. The donkey stood beside him, calm and relaxed. When the riders were gone, the donkey lowered its head and touched Tom's arm gently. Tom smiled and stroked its back. Tom spent the rest of the day building the fence. Each post he placed into the ground made him feel more settled. He was building not just a home but a future. The donkey stayed near him, sometimes grazing on the soft grass, sometimes watching him work as if guarding him. As evening arrived, the fence stood complete. It was simple but strong. Tom opened the gate and guided the donkey inside. The animal stepped in slowly and then walked around the enclosure with quiet excitement. It lowered its head to eat fresh grass and moved with a peaceful rhythm. Tom leaned against the fence and watched the donkey explore. The sky turned orange, and the field glowed warmly. Everything felt calm. Tom thought about the journey he had taken in just a few days. He had bought an abandoned barn without knowing what he would find, and now he had a companion, a purpose, and a place that finally felt like home. He remembered the empty feeling he used to carry, the long days where he felt unnoticed and unneeded. Now he felt different, stronger, connected. The donkey had changed his life in ways he never expected. The barn had brought them together, and the land had given them both a new start. Tom stepped inside the enclosure and walked toward the donkey. The animal lifted its head and walked to him, stopping close enough for Tom to place his hand on its back. They stood together quietly as the sun lowered behind the hills. Tom made a silent promise. He would care for the donkey for as long as he lived on this land. He would keep the barn strong and the field open. He would protect the peace they had built together. The wind moved through the tall grass. The barn stood strong behind them. And Tom felt full in a way he had never felt before. He had come to this land with almost nothing. Now he had a home, a friend, and a future that felt bright. And it had all begun the day a poor cowboy bought an abandoned barn for $15 and found a lonely donkey waiting inside.